Welcome to the Break the Bias Global Podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion, featuring women and men from different cultures, experiences, and professions coming together on thought-provoking episodes to challenge the narrative, gain insights and get inspired. Powerful topics right here to help you shatter your glass ceiling. Thanks for tuning in. Now, for today's episode. Hi Christoffer, welcome to today's episode on Women in Gaming. I'm so excited to have you on board. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sunila. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you. I'm very well and excited. Thank you. So Christoffer, today is all about women in gaming. And I'm so excited that you're on board for this conversation. As you know, this podcast is all around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are appealing to different groups, different cultures, women and men from around the world. And as we speak about women in gaming, I'm thinking, obviously, we need more female representation in esports and gaming. And not just esports, because, we need more female representation across the board in all sectors. But as we are speaking and focusing on women in gaming on today's episode, an interesting insight for the audience to hear today, Christoffer, is that we have, I think, half of all gamers in the world are women. And as you know, I'm all about building strong female brands globally. So I'm so excited to also look more around, discussing the biases that exist in getting more women representation in gaming and as an industry, and together, going deeper with you in this episode on how we can break that bias. So Christoffer, with that context of today's exciting episode,
Yes.
I also happened to pull out something interesting about you, my friend. I hear that you are a celebrated video gamer yourself. You are the former most #1 scores in the world in a rhythm game called Osu. Wow, tell me about that, and would you like to introduce yourself, Christoffer?
I would be more than happy to share. So actually, my journey in gaming started at the age of 16 when I lost my mother to leukemia. Then, of course, I started playing more and more video games. Of course, this resulted in getting better and better at video games, but it was my escape from reality. And then when I kept on playing more and more, of course, it resulted in me getting better and better in gaming and at the specific games I was playing. But of course, it was also at the expense of my own personal health and well-being. So then I continued the journey in competitive gaming. I went into broadcasting, and between 2015 to 2019, I held the most #1 scores in the world in OSU, just as you mentioned. And at this time as well, I also launched my company called Healthy Gaming to help people successfully balance their everyday health and video gaming habits. Basically giving back to those who now face the same issues in gaming that I used to face myself back when I was playing competitively.
Interesting. I want to go more deeper into that, but before that, speaking about women in gaming and increasing representation, there are two names that come to mind, and that is Jade Raymond and Amy Hennig. The rise of representation of women in gaming has also led to more women being able to get into corporate level positions, which is great, right? Ultimately, we do want women to absolutely climb into leadership positions. So these two names come to mind as well. And going deeper into even your journey and your enthusiasm and connection to working in the space you are with healthy gaming, Christoffer, could you elaborate more on it and tell my audience more about the existing problems in gaming?
Yeah, so of course, first of all, I think, just like you say, it's great that we see women racing in executive positions. And apart from those two, we also have some other highlights, such as Laura Meal, who works with EA. And it's beautiful when you see women rising to those positions and directly contributing to different companies' internal cultures. Because of course this fosters creativity, it fosters innovation, and ultimately creates more engagement and productivity as well as innovation within the companies. So I really hope it's something that a lot of other gaming companies out there will learn from. And I believe it's really crucial that they actually take action, because looking at some of the women-specific issues in gaming, you have clear cases of gender-based discrimination and sexism, where various studies on exposure includes various numbers, with the lowest being 30% of all women playing multiplayer games having been exposed to gender-based discrimination and sexism while gaming. That's a number that is kind of scary and incredibly high, so I really hope that we can find ways to break status quo and change this. And as a result of the gender-based discrimination and in-game sexism, it's estimated that more than 20% of women in multiplayer games hide their gender, with 77% of those hiding it because they don't want to be exposed to this specific issue. And apart from this, we also have gaming disorder, which is about impaired control over gaming, where an individual prioritizes gaming over other activities to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other daily activities such as studies, work, and also nurturing relationships. And looking at that number, by the end of 2021, we had a total of 27.8 million women in gaming facing this issue. And apart from that, you also have general health issues, where it's estimated that about 10% of all gamers face some kind of social, physical, or mental health issue relating either directly or indirectly to their video gaming habits. And of course, looking at these numbers, they're scary high, and when you think about it, it might be your daughter, it might be your closest female friend, it might be just a random person you're walking across the street who's exposed to these issues. And that's why I believe it's really important, and I'm really thankful for the fact that you choose to have me here today, so we can both shed a light on these issues as well as find ways to drive through change.
That's really interesting, Christoffer. You mentioned quite a few hard facts there, just mind-blowing facts when you look at data. And you also mentioned 77% hide their gender when they game, and I'm like, wow, 77%. Right there, I'm thinking, what are these biases or what are these hurdles that are holding our girls and women behind when it comes to gaming? Christoffer, could you also elaborate a little bit about, just for the advantage of the listeners listening in, who might not be familiar with the sector, when we talk about women in gaming and when we talk about gamers, just the dynamic, the distinction between casual gamers and professional gamers, just a little bit on that, if we could just touch and go as well, just to give this more nuance, the conversation more nuance, because at the end of the day, when we're looking at the 77%, we're not just focusing on the competitive female gamers, we're also looking at the larger population, like my daughter, right, Christoffer? I've got like a 10-year-old baby girl, she plays video games, right? So this could be even applicable to her. Could you give us a little bit of a breakdown in terms of the nuance around a female gamer, average age, also the distinction between competitive gaming and casual gamers? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So you have different gamers, of course, playing for different reasons. And when you look at it, regardless if you're in competitive gaming or if you're in casual gaming, you do have various ways of being exposed to the discrimination and sexism. In terms of the competitive gaming aspect, we have cases where unfortunately, guys indicate that women in gaming might be directed towards their skill, towards the reason for being in competitive gaming. And looking at the casual gamers, of course, you have both single player games and multiplayer games. And when it comes to the single player games, which is people playing the video games on their own, they're more likely to face issues with gaming disorder, whereas multiplayer games are more likely to expose women to sexism and discrimination, since you then directly interact with other players. And looking at the advantages of gaming, you also have the aspect of building social connections, the cross-cultural engagement, and it would be a shame to see such potential utilizing gaming for good go to waste only because of these issues. And that's why I believe it's good to be aware of the fact that different games comes with different problems as well. And apart from this as well, you also have the content creators, the people who make posts on social medias, who might broadcast their games playing live, and you have these women who are excellent content creators being in a very, very vulnerable position today of being exposed to sexism and objectification as well on those streaming platforms, especially those who broadcast with their camera on, because when people can hide anonymously, of course, that unfortunately raises the risk for sexist comments on someone's looks that might result in anxiety, might result in depression, might result in lower self-esteem with the girl who is want to create content that make other people happy. And you also have those female content creators out there who don't use their camera, but you still see some guys in some other communities asking them to continuously turn on their cameras because of their gender. And it's really important that we're aware of all these issues and the different games both people around us play, that ourselves plays, but also that our children plays, to make sure that we can properly create awareness and address the challenges that comes with it.
One might even say that it kind of is another notion of harassment, because you go to play the game and here you are forced to switch on your video cam. And also, it's interesting because I don't know if there's a data point for this to back it up, but I wonder if you look at like the people that I know in my life who are heavy into gamers tend to be people who heavy into gaming tend to be people who are kind of introverted, particularly in their teenage years when they have a higher adoption rate into video games. So imagine that type of an introverted persona getting into a video game to find some sort of relief and salvation. Being forced to switch on a video camera is like a mental health point right there. So nobody should be forced to do anything is the bottom line. Also, I pulled out an interesting reading here that said, that suggested the size of the industry, right? When we talk about esports, when we talk about the gaming industry, there's an article pulled out here that says it's approximately $155 billion in revenue, and the expectation is that by 2025 it's going to reach $260 billion in revenue. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this to showcase the fact that this is the type of growth potential for women who are currently forming nearly half of the global population of gamers around the world. So looking at that number and taking that into the industry, applying that to the industry, if we can actively look at programs to engage more women effectively, impactfully, where we advance them, where we promote them, and where they are having where they can enjoy more inclusive and diverse experience, there's a lot of growth potential in this industry. But as we are talking about the biases and the hurdles that actually keep women behind from achieving this potential, coming back to the size of the problem, because we now just heard about the size of the industry. I want to talk about a little bit more about the size of the problem, Christoffer. There was an interesting study on female representation on video games that I came across. And that basically said that women tend to be depicted in video games as victims or damsel in distress. What are your thoughts about that?
I definitely believe that's the case, and I unfortunately believe a lot of it has roots in the older parts of the gaming culture. I want to take the moment to shed a bit of optimism on this still, because if you reflect where we are today versus what the gaming industry looked like maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago, we are seeing an improvement both in terms of supporting those facing these issues, but we're also seeing certain companies taking actions. And I believe it's really important in this case that we observe the companies and observe the people who are making these moves and actually support them in order to help them successfully come through. And just like you say, I believe it's really important when 46% of all gamers in the world are women, that they do have the resources they need to both nurture their own well-being alongside their gaming, but also help enable them, take them to the next level, and put them in positions where they can contribute greatly to fostering creativity, fostering innovation, contributing to better company cultures. Because let's be honest, there are clear research and indications showing the advantages of DEI both in gaming and as a whole. And I really do believe that we need to ensure that the support needed is there, because it is a growing market and it does come with great opportunities as well. But we need to make sure that the women in need, both those who are exposed to the issue, but also those who want to grow, the amazing talent out there, that they get the opportunities they deserve to turn gaming into a career. And I believe both individuals, parents, as well as the corporations have different responsibilities to ensure this. Of course, from an individual perspective, you need to speak up when you see the issue occur and support those who are exposed to the issue. It's really important that we both listen to the victims as well as mark and make sure that sexism is actually not okay. And then we also have the parents and those closest who plays a lot of games. It's really important to maintain continuous dialogue with your children about the environment in gaming, addressing not only the risks based on the type of games you play, but also what's good about gaming to enable their children to get the most out of gaming. Myself, as an example, I made some of my closest friends in life through gaming. I've had numerous moments with a lot of laughing, a lot of fun around gaming, both with guys and girls, when you have that safe space and safe environment. And it's really important as well that corporations and game developers take the responsibility to ensure that the in-game functions are available and made easily accessible to minimize the risks, with clear rules and guidelines to follow, which are also efficiently enforced and penalized when not followed. And I believe what I mentioned before with the content creators and their exposure is that if the rules and guidelines to prevent these issues were better enforced in a way, we could actually change the status quo. Because if the majority does clearly mark that it's not okay, then of course those people following, those who might be very introverted, using gaming as an escape from reality, have their gaming idols, they're less likely to follow that bad behavior if they see others speaking up on it and starting to behave well. Now I know I went a little bit off rail, but hey, it's a topic I'm highly passionate about discussing.
Absolutely. I love that, Christopher. You know, when we're talking about gaming, I love that you brought in the optimism as well. And I agree because, you know, this is a huge industry and there's so much we can do to engage more women in significant roles, paving the way, role modeling per se. And also, you know, I am aware, being a mom myself, of a girl of my daughter being a gamer, there is some stigma attached to gaming as well. So it's interesting to me that, you know, you advocate for the optimism and also the opportunity because, you know, I kind of put this under women in tech as well because you have women in gaming. It's another form of innovation, of creativity. You know, so it's about also understanding, you know, what that dynamic is all about. And end of the day, if we really do want to see the change, you know, as in innovation, as with everything, as we change in the world, it first starts with creating that awareness, understanding what those specific insight points are, and then designing and developing with enormous clarity the kind of action that is required to make that shift, to make that change, to make that improvement, and in our context, to break that bias and to create more opportunities and enable more women to tap into the growth potential in the gaming sector and in esports. It's such a huge sector now. Having said that, I also want to just drop an insight I came across which said in a research that young girls prefer to play a character of their own gender much more than boys do. And also that article went on to suggest that on average, female-led games sell fewer copies than male-led ones, but also have lower marketing budgets. Now, that is a very interesting insight. And also you did touch on, you know, the optimism and some steps that people could take to overcome and break these biases. And I want you to think a little bit more about that as we wrap up today's episode. And you know, we close with how we can take DEI to another level in this sector. Before that, you know, I was asking myself from a DEI lens, because as you know, Christopher, I specialize in that. I'm a specialist in DEI and I do this work globally across 6 continents. I was asking myself, Sunela, what would be, you know, the key goal or some key milestones, you know, to really see DE&I flourish or create the methodology and frameworks to have more women instrumental in gaming. There were 2 key points, Christopher, that came into my mind. Would you like to know what they are?
Absolutely. Please try.
The first point is to create video games that are inclusive and or are for women. And I would say definitely look at developing a narrative that appeals to female gamers. What is that? Defining that narrative and moving into that. Point number 2, hire more women to build these games. Right? So, so those would be just 2 things that came into my mind. So, Christopher, in closing, I would like to ask you, we have seen how DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, improves industries across the board. So, what do you believe the greatest benefit of DEI in gaming are, and why?
I really do believe that with new people and new talent coming into it, you get a whole new level of thinking in terms of the creativity, both leveraging the advantages of gaming being how it does help develop an imaginative creativity, but also innovation, creating tomorrow's games. And I believe it's really important that we make sure that those women out there with great ideas about both games, who wants to work in gaming, who enjoys playing games themselves and wants to turn it into a professional career, that they have the knowledge and understanding how to do so. And by doing that, I really do believe that we can enable this advantage, which I believe is the greatest advantage of DEI in gaming, and also by including women in gaming and doing a better job including women in gaming as well, because the gaming industry, it's booming. And when you have so much talent out there, so much innovation, so many good ideas, ensuring that they have the support they need, both in terms of game development as well as playing as well, because we need to support women looking to go into professional gaming, and that both means corporations and organizations backing female-led teams, also giving them the resources they need to actually go pro, and apart from that, also supporting the content creators, those who just wants to create fun and engaging content, who wants to be close with their communities of gamers, that we also enable them and give them the tools they need to successfully do so we can actually foster that creativity and innovation, and in a way also drive performance, because there are clear indicators that DEI does result in increased and better performance, and we've seen it in a lot of other industries. We're starting to see it around tech, and I believe it's a great time to start seeing it more in gaming as well, which is probably the most important message I have in my closing, is that we need to enable women in gaming, and we need to break barriers in gaming, and we need to break the bias and create a better culture for women in gaming.
Absolutely, I love that. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of today's episode. Christoffer, thank you for joining us today. I loved today's episode. Women in gaming. Women Empowered Global works with collaborators and initiatives to advance women in their careers and increase representation in leadership and decision making. And this global DE&I podcast is also very much a part of that mission, as you know. So having said that, we do have an active interest in the women and esports space too, and we are working on a program to empower women in gaming together with Christoffer and his company Healthy Gaming, and we have been exploring a unique and holistic leadership development initiative for female gamers. And if you listening in today would like to know more about that, drop an email to contact@womenempowered.global, or just drop a DM to us on our Instagram or our LinkedIn at Women Empowered Global. Christoffer, how could they reach you if they want to reach out to you?
Of course, I would be more than happy to receive any emails, whether you've been exposed to the issue, whether you want to pursue a career in gaming, whether you have a child, a daughter, even a son that you're worried about not being able to get the most out of gaming. You send me an email on Christoffer with CH and double F at healthygaming.info. Thank you so much for having me, Selma.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining, Christoffer. And with that, we conclude today's episode. Stay tuned, everyone, for the next one. See you soon. Bye. This podcast was initiated by Women Empowered Global, a global organization that empowers women through education, career advancement, and entrepreneurial programs, with a network reach in over 40 countries across 6 continents. To learn more, visit www.womenempoweredglobal.com. See you on the next episode.